This episode is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the #1 seller of games and gaming accessories. And GatheringMagic.com, the #1 resource for Magic the Gathering news and articles.
Hi, I'm Miranda, and this is my Oona, Queen of the Fae Commander deck. So this is Oona, Queen of the Fae. She's a 5/5 flyer for 6. Her activated ability is X and 1 blue-black hybrid. Choose a color. Target opponent removes the top X cards of his or her library from the game. For each card of the chosen color removed this way, put a 1/1 blue-black fairy rogue creature token with flying into play. I originally built Oona as my first commander when I first started playing Magic because I love the lore and block with the fairy tale theme. Oona was my favorite character, my favorite backstory. The deck originally started off as a fairy tribal, but it didn't work out, and I still do not play Oona the traditional way. So let's get started. I have 15 islands and 7 swamps. For non-basics, I got Dimir Guildgate, Dreadship Reef, Jwar Island Refuge, Dimir Aqueduct, and for flavors, Secluded Glen, of course. For fetches, I've got Grixis Panorama, Terramorphic Expanse, and Evolving Wilds. Halimar Depths is one of my favorite lands because you get to scry, and Moonring Island is just a fun ability, and Nephalia Drownyard. Bojuka Bog as well because Oona loves to exile, and I got a couple mana rocks with Mistvein Borderpost and Dimir Signet. So first, let's start with the Tunnel Vision. I have a small combo in here. Tunnel Vision is name a card. Target player reveals cards from the top of his or her library until the named card is revealed. If it is, that player puts the rest of the revealed cards into his or her graveyard and puts a named card on top of his or her library. Otherwise, the player shuffles his or her library. It's really fun also if you know your opponent's deck. You can just name a card and maybe it's at the bottom. To go along with Tunnel Vision, there's Hinder for some tuck abilities, Spell Crumple, Spin into Myth, and Vessel of Endless Rest. For going into some spells, we got Traumatize, top half of his or her library round down into your graveyard. Archive Trap is really fun in the beginning of the game if someone fetches a land. Increasing Confusion, I like this because of its flashback ability. And Mind Funeral is a nice cheap mill. Got Memory Erosion, starting with my mill permanence. It's just nice because it's a constant mill effect. Trepanation Blade, I like to stick on one of my flyers. Mindcrank is a lot of fun in a multiplayer deck. Whenever an opponent loses life, that player puts many cards from the top of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So it's just really fun when you have multiple people hitting each other. Keating Stone is great, and it's win condition right there. And Leyline of the Void, if starting off, it's really awesome because every card is exiled if it'll be put into a graveyard, and that's Oona's flavor once again. Just going to my mill creatures, I start with Hedron Crab. He's a lot of fun if you can play him in the first few turns. His abilities get good value out of it. Mindshrieker, I've won games with Mindshrieker alone. It mills, but Mindshrieker gets +X until end of turn, where X is the milled card's convert mana cost. So if your opponent has some nice fatties or some really expensive artifacts, it's a lot of fun. And pairing with him, we got Riddle Keeper. I like him as well just because in the beginning it's just getting the mill strategy rolling. Dreamborn Muse. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player puts the X cards of his or her library into your graveyard, or X the number of cards of his or her hand. It's just fun. Duralf's Mind Crusher. Target player puts top 5 cards into his or her graveyard when he enters the battlefield, and he has Undying. A lot of fun with clones, which this deck does run. Extractor Demon, he's a nice fat flyer, but whenever a creature leaves a battlefield, we have target player put the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, and he has on Earth. I think he's fun against tokens, especially. I have Nemesis of Reason. I like him because he's a 3/7, so he's tough to kill, but every time he attacks, you mill 10. So I like it because I don't necessarily have to do, you don't have to do combat damage, and you still get to mill a nice chunk of their library. Sazdak, Lord of Secrets. He could potentially be the commander for this deck, but I love running him in here. If he would deal combat damage to a player, instead put that many 1/1 counters on Sazdak, and that player puts that many cards from his or her library into his or her graveyard. So he's fun because he mills, and each time he gets bigger. Consuming Aberration. This is getting into my Graveyard Matters creatures. His power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in your opponent's graveyards. And whenever you cast a spell, each opponent reveals cards on top of his or her library until he reveals a land card and puts those cards into his or her graveyard. It's like a mini Mind Funeral. Then we have Mortivore, who, like Consuming Aberration, power and toughness equal number of cards, number of creature cards in all graveyards. In multiplayers, he gets huge. Then got Bone Horde, which is very similar, and Sewer Nemesis as well. I like him because he constantly gets bigger, because whenever a chosen player casts a spell, that player puts a top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard, which in turn makes him bigger. And Guilt Feeder, he's a 0/4 horror, but he can't be blocked except by artifacts or black creatures, so he has fear. And whenever he attacks and isn't blocked, defending player loses 1 life for each card in his or her graveyard. So if I've Mind Funeraled you or Traumatized you, he gets to be really dirty. Into the Reanimate strategy of the deck. This is starting off with the classic Reanimate. Put target card from graveyard into battlefield under your control. You lose lives equal to the convert mana cost, which isn't that horrible. And then Rise from the Grave. Got Geth, Lord of the Vault, who likes the graveyard and likes to mill. So his ability is X and 1 black. Put target artifact creature card with convert mana cost X from opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Then that player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So he's good when he can get his ability rolling. And then the most expensive Reanimate, Artisan of Kozilek. So really like him. And he got Annihilator 2. And Havengul Lich, which is like a Reanimator on a stick. Just cast target creature card for 1 from a graveyard this turn, and when you cast this card, Havengul Lich gains all activated abilities of that card until end of turn. So he can be fun. Now getting into the tokens and zombie sub-theme. Got Spanish Bitter Blossom here, which is really nice when you can get it out in the first couple turns of the game. Grave Titan, a nice 6/6 fatty, but whenever you enter the battlefield or attacks, put 2 black zombie creature tokens in the battlefield. And he pairs nicely with Undead Alchemist, which is one of my favorite cards in the deck. Won multiple games just because of him. His ability, if a zombie would deal combat damage to a player, instead that player puts that many cards from the top of his or her library into his or her graveyard. And whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from his or her library, exile that card and put a 2/2 black zombie creature token into the battlefield. So that's a lot of fun when you're milling, especially. And he pairs well with Lich, Lord of Unks, because he gets to create a 1/1 blue-black zombie wizard tokens for 1 blue, 1 black, and tapping him. But he also has the active ability of 2 blue, 2 black. Target player loses X life and puts top X cards of his or her library into her graveyard, where X is the number of zombies you control. So that pairing with Undead Alchemist, having multiple tokens in the battlefield, I get to mill a lot, which is a lot of fun. And then Grim Quartzborn, he's nice because he's removal. He needs tokens, and I'm creating fairy tokens and zombies, so I get to sacrifice them to him, but it's just a lot of fun when put 1/1 counter on him, he also gets bigger. It's just fun. It's just good to remove those annoying creatures. And then Dreamborn Muse. Drawing cards is a lot of fun. Even if you only have her out, at the beginning of your upkeep, you draw X cards and use X life, or X the number of zombies you control. So could get dangerous later down the line, but if you just have her out, she's good. So getting into some Lord cards, got Dire Undercurrents. Whenever you play a blue creature, comes to play under your control, you may have target player draw a card, me. And whenever a black creature comes into play under your control, you may have target player discard a card, you. So that's a lot of fun with the zombies and with my the zombie tokens and the fairy tokens coming into play. We got a Beguiler of Wills in here, so if I do have a multiple amount of tokens, I can just deal a creature, because if you tap her, you gain control of target creature, or the power less or equal to the number of creatures you control. So she can work up really nicely. Glenelender Liege. Yes, blue creatures get +1/+1, black creatures get +1/+1 creatures I control, and she has flying. And cloning her can be a lot of fun too. Now, one of my ultimate favorite cards is Sanquan, Lord of Wu. Creatures you control have horsemanship, so they can't be blocked except by creatures with horsemanship, so all my creatures become unblockable. A lot of fun with my fatties and with the flyers. And he's one of my pet cards. I adore him. Now getting into some removal. Got Go for the Throat, destroy target non-artifact creature. It's a staple. Hideous End, destroy target non-black creature. Its controller loses 2 life. And Sever the Bloodline, exile target creature and all other creatures with the same name as that creature, and it has flashback, really nice against tokens. And Vengeful Feral, which I like to have in my graveyard. He has Death Touch, he's a 5/4 Death Touch, but whenever combat damage is dealt to you or planeswalker you control, if he's in your graveyard, destroy a target attacking creature and then put Vengeful Feral on top of your library. So I like having him in my graveyard just as a protection. Avatar of Woe. I love her tap ability to destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. And if there are 10 or more creature cards in total in all graveyards, Avatar of Woe costs 6 less to cast. And if I'm milling, then that's guaranteed. Hex is a lot of fun, a nice pinpoint wrath. 6 mana, destroy 6 creatures. Really nice if I don't want to blow up the world, and I usually don't like to. So I get to just ping my opponents, which is nice. And Undercity Plague, one of my new favorite cards. Target player loses 1 life and discards a card, then sacrifices a permanent, and it has Cipher. So if I can stick him on a fairy or anything with flying, even just if the creature gets destroyed the next turn, getting the ability twice makes it worth its while. And I got Polymorph in here. Polymorph is fun with my tokens. Destroy target creature, it can't be regenerated. Its controller reveals cards on top of his or her library until he reveals a creature card. That player puts the top card in the battlefield and then shuffles all cards revealed this way into his or her library. And he works really nicely because if I destroy a little token, I can polymorph into a Stormtide Leviathan or Rexo the Risen Deep, which these guys are just nice in win conditions. Got Island Walk from Stormtide, and same with Rexo, he has Swamp Walk as well. I love his second ability. He deals combat damage to a player. You may cast target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost, and if that card would be put into a graveyard discard, exile instead. So that's a lot of fun. Mimic that because, well, Mimic that because it's good. And getting into some clones. So got clone Phyrexian Metamorph. I love it because copy of any artifact or creature. So that's really nice if someone's got, some nice armor or a sword, then I can get it. Evil Twin, clone with a nice backstab ability. You You may have him enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature, but then for blue and black and tapping him, you can destroy a target creature with the same name as him. So I get to steal your nice guy and then kill it. Cackling Counterpart, I love because of his flashback. Put a token that's a copy of target creature you control. So he's fun with Glenelender Liege or Undead Alchemist. And then the Rite of Replication, just the ultimate clone. So, getting to the last couple cards, got Diabolic Tutor. Search your library for a card and then put that card into your hand and shuffle your library. And I usually always tutor for my tutor, Liliana Vess. Love her -2 ability of search library for a card, her tutor. But her -8 is great because you can put all creatures from all graveyards into play under your control. So in the end, after I've milled either half or a good portion of your deck, that's very nice. Sorum Markov, because he can just be a win just with himself. And then I also have Jace Bellerin. I love the draw card, but the -10 top 20 cards from your library into your graveyard is wonderful. And the very last card in the deck is Jace Memory Adept. His 0 ability is one I love to abuse. Target player puts the top 10 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So that is just wonderful. And that is it. Thank you for watching CMDR Decks. Don't forget to subscribe and favorite.